Ni hao, welcome to Laufen. This is Germany now. What you see over the bridge is Austria. So we are also living on a half island, a little bit like the project in For You that we are doing in Lintau. And I would like to explain you the first proposal. So that we did with Stefano, Stephanie and Joanna. So 4 different countries worked on this project. Italy, Spain and Belgium and Germany. So we started with this clay model. So we did all the design on this one, and we started with a little sketch in the ground, and then we went into the volumes. So we want to start with this project, which is the Ceramic Museum, that also houses the 2 workshops and showroom areas for the artists. We thought we would like to combine it into one building because we thought it's good to start with a very strong gesture for the beginning, just to mark the beginning of a new thing, cultural heart in Lintau city. So this building could also really function on its own without all the other buildings happening or being realized. Only one building we also think which would be nice, which is the little small cafe that would be then surrounded by gardens. So this would kind of be the first. Having all the functions included in this one makes it bigger and gives it also more importance, which we think is adequate for the ceramics in Lintau, which are really absolutely beautiful and so unique, and it's nice to give them a very big status also within that museum island. So let's imagine the museum will not be realized. So we take away this part, and this part becomes artists' workshops and showrooms, as well as these. So altogether we would have 4 then. And these parts, these buildings would turn into light structures like pergolas that just structure the outside, gardenings, and this pergola would extend to this canal that is here into the waterfront. So this would all turn then in a big community garden, and the pergola under this one could be just a shaded area also for any kinds of infrastructure that would be needed. This is the museum, which houses the history of the culture of the Silk Road, and we thought we make the road as element or as main topic of the museum. That kind of is the museum itself is a road, is a pathway, and showing all the stations and the different parts of the culture of the Silk Road, and also embracing the outside landscape, because we felt that during these times of the Silk Road that the landscape was just as important, or maybe even more important than the architecture itself. So we really wanted to give the landscaping a very high status and importance in this project. So the Museum of the Silk Road is kind of mirroring or reflecting the pathways and the trade and the traveling. So these buildings, they will house the artists and also the showrooms, and when you see it also, it's kind of reflecting this kind of typologies, are reflecting the housing typologies with the inner courtyards that are typical also in that region. So we also wanted to bring in this element. And talking about the outside spaces now, which are also a very important element of the museum itself. So they will be also used as exhibition areas with different topics. So this one will be like a very secret garden where we want to have really beautiful colors and smells, where a lot of butterflies will be. And then in the niches of all these thick earth walls, we think there could be like replicates of some Buddha statues or other things that we saw in the cultural museum, in the big one that we visited, of the regional town. So instead of putting in a fake cement wall, they could be really actually in the mud walls, and also in this part we would like to have a herbal garden, just to show the richness that this soil can create, and that this, because in Chinese medicine or in China culture is still existing a lot of know-how on the treasure of plants, which is in Europe almost lost. So just to incorporate these things, how to use plants and in which way and for what purpose. So this would be also a little bit of a demonstration gardens of healing plants and herbs. And it could also have we saw, I don't know, Gary, if you remember in that other museum that we saw a lot of wax figures with kind of huts and situations of the Silk Road. And instead of having wax figures there, we would like to have, for example, children experiencing it themselves, you know, being in a little hut and trying to cook something on a fire and play actually the life of those people in those times. And not just observing it, but actively being involved in that. So we could all imagine that in these areas that opens towards the river would be more a jungle and forestry area, because I heard that it was a forestry area before it was trees were cut, and it would be just nice to have a shaded outside space, and also attached with the cafe, where people could really, this could be the garden for the cafe, and people could really enjoy under the trees. It could also be a little picnic area, which I believe is also a tradition in China, to have, you know, picnic, and then it would be along the river. And this area is more you know, with trees, but with benches and where you can rest. And this area, which would be, you know, it's coming up a bit, so it's a little bit like an arena where you could have steps where people could sit, and you could even have on this wall, you know, a little movie shows in the evening if you want, or you could have you could build up a stage here, and you could have like an orchestra playing or some kind of theater game. So this would be more like an arena, outside arena. This part is also used as part of the exhibition of the ceramic museum. And this part would be for community gardenings, where people who have no space inside the city could use some, or it could be a demonstration gardening for organic farming or permaculture, or we would really like to have is like a fertile field where people could actually grow their vegetables. So in this project we would really like to celebrate the potentials of earth. Main vision for this project was to celebrate the potentials of earth, both in habitat with the architecture and also with the gardens, you know, the potential of bringing out food and life. And I believe we have two main challenges right now, which is how to create enough food and food security for a growing world population, and the other thing is how can we create enough habitat and enough good living conditions for people. And I think earthen structures are one answer to that problem, because usually you build a house and you contaminate the soil and you can't use it as a garden anymore. But with earth architecture can go back to the ground if you don't maintain it, and if it's not needed, it can just degrade it and a garden can grow on it. And you can take the earth again and rebuild the structures. And I believe this is a very important element, that to show the intertwining of agriculture and architecture and constructing. And I think this project shows this in a very poetic way, kind of this embracing of the earth and also coming from the ground, building the habitat, but also the potential to go back. There are studies and research that show the positive effect on earth, on direct contact with the earth, on our body, on our health, and also on our happiness. And I think we all know that when we do some gardening or clay modeling or so, that it really gets us from the focus in our brains, you know, somehow down, and gets us grounded and gets us more in our own middle. And I think it must be wonderful to walk, you know, within all these earthen structures, these massive earth walls. And I'm sure you have been in some monastery in Tibet or in Bhutan or other parts in China, where it's just an incredible feeling when you walk through archaic structures and you have, you feel surrounded by walls that you want to touch, and you feel kind of really embraced and in a very warm atmosphere. And I think it would be just a wonderful atmosphere if you walk around, and it would give the city really a very humane place where people feel wanted and accepted and feel at home. And I think this is the biggest potential of this project, that we create not only a museum where they maybe go once or twice a year, but really a place where they just love to be and just have in the weekends a chat with their friends, or a picnic, or just meditate, or doing yoga in the mornings. And this is how we really imagine all the different atmospheres in outside. So we have more the really secret, very enclosed ones with niches for sitting also, and then you have more the open spaces and more the communicative parts and the more the wild parts. So with the colors and the smells and also the microclimate, we believe it would be just a wonderful space. And we also don't want to have the spaces outside sealed, but really perforated, so that really the nature can have the natural circles again. So we really want this project in harmony with nature. In terms of square meters, we are slightly on a lower limit with this project, but we found that the dimensions are very humane, and the scale is, when it's getting bigger, it's really imposing too much and it's getting too massive. And my friend at the Harvard Graduate School of Design, the urbanism chair, Rahul Mehrotra, he always talks about architecture of the impatient capitalism. When you try to put too much buildings on a small scale, we believe then it becomes really too imposing on this space, and the sensitiveness would get lost. And when you see these are the small people, the dimensions are, I think, difficult to increase even more. So this is the second proposal that we have. In this one we tried to follow the same strategy, to start with a really big gesture and a strong beginning for the ceramic museum. And this is the other museum, which is now all together in one structure that opens towards the river, the canal, and also the mountains, and the temple is in that direction. And it also has this kind of interior courtyard, which is a more intimate space. And then it's also easily divided with three structures for the artists and the showrooms. So in terms of functions, we believe this is probably easier to handle and to manage. In terms of dimension, I mean, you see the people here, and especially from that side, if you see it, it's really at the edge of not being a bit... For us, this project has the nickname Picasso, because it sometimes has a little bit of the graphics of a Picasso face. But in terms of sensitiveness and cultural incorporation or blending in, we have the feeling that this is our favorite, really, in terms of the spaces and that people could enjoy, and the proportions. We feel that this is less dominating than this one, and this is clearly our favorite. In terms of accesses, we have three different ones. One, the main entrance, which goes directly to the main museum. Then one that kind of opens up and gets denser and opens up again to the mountain, and also the canal here. And it's kind of a more dynamic floating. We have a third entrance, which is more through a jungle-like area, we imagine that, so they come more to the wilderness, and then you just then experience this one. It would be also nice if this was open to the public then. But then we don't have this outside exhibitions area, this would be all done inside. So in terms of the non-realization of the big museum, we would just have a really large garden area where these separate buildings sit in like birds in, or nests in the environment, and that would just be really surrounded and with a lot of more jungle-like gardening structure then. Well, for us it was really a joy to work on this project, and we're looking forward to cooperate more with you. We also want to thank you that we got this commission from you. It's really a pleasure to work with you. Ni hao and xin chen.